Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patti LuPone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with theater's biggest names. This episode is with Yvette Gonzalez-Nacer, who is one of the Fates in Hadestown and part of the Broadway Busker series that's being produced this year by the Times Square Alliance, completely virtually in quarantine. Yvette, thank you again, if you're listening, for the conversation that we had. I don't remember if we said this while we were still recording or not, but I feel like we're kindred spirits in a way. We're very, very similar people, and we have never met before this conversation, and we were just talking like we've known each other forever. It was such a wonderful feeling for me, and she said for her afterwards as well, just to be able to have like a real conversation in the midst of all of this sort of isolation and loneliness that we're going through in the middle of this quarantine. When she smiles, her whole face smiles. She's just one of those people that you want to continue to talk to. She's a multifaceted person who always wants to grow, always wants to learn. And we actually talked about this and bonded over it, that we need to be happy in the moment, but we still want to continue imagining one step further. She imagines herself as sort of a form of meditation, one step farther in her life and her career, so she can be emotionally prepared for that growth when it comes. I think it's very admirable and something that we all should try. And as always, before we get into the episode, find me online at theater_podcast on Instagram and the Twitters, on Facebook /official theater podcast. Please leave a rating. Please send a review. I love reading the reviews. Show your support so I can keep transcriptions going. I want to make sure these episodes are as accessible as possible for everybody. So show your support at ttp.fm/Patreon, Patreon. And now everybody, please, please, please enjoy this episode as much as I did with Yvette Gonzalez-Nacer.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
My guest today is a true multi-hyphenate, having found success as a Broadway actress, recording artist, and a TV and film star. You've seen her as Cha-Cha in Grease Live, Vanessa in the first Broadway National tour of In the Heights, and in the Emmy Award-winning TV series The Fresh Beat Band and Madam Secretary. She's also starred in stage productions like West Side Story, Much Ado About Nothing, 3 Mo Divas. Recently, she added voiceover artist to her resume as she voiced the role of Phyllis on Goldie and Bear, as well as Kiki on Nick Jr.'s The Fresh Beat Band of Spies. And once Broadway returns, you can catch her on the Broadway stage as one of the Fates in Hadestown. She is now part of the Broadway Busker concert series produced virtually this year by the Times Square Alliance. Yvette Gonzalez-Nacer, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here with you.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Nacer?
You did. It was so awesome. I was like clapping inside.
So you were telling me before we started recording that it's a Lebanese name that was given a Spanish pronunciation. Is that right?
Well, yeah. So my family, we're from Cuba, but my ancestors come from Lebanon and Spain. And when the Lebanese side came to Cuba, they changed the spelling of Nacer from Nasser to Nacer, which is, a Cuban word. So I guess it was like the Cuban spelling. And it means to be born. So that's kind of fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool. And I guess people mispronounce it as Nacer all the time.
Oh, I get everything. Yeah. One time, actually, my favorite pronunciation of basically messing up every part of my name was Yvette Gonzalez-Nacer.
Yvette?
I always remember that because I was like, there's no way that really happened, but it really happened.
I had another friend who's named Yvette, and she said that people often say Yvette.
Yeah, Yvette, Yvette. That's my it's a pet peeve, Yvette. Just because there's a Y, it's confusing. I get it. But
I guess reading's hard. Okay.
Man.
So you are Cuban-American, right? So are your parents both Cuban, or what's the heritage? What's the childhood?
Oh, yeah. Well, my dad came from Havana, Cuba, my mom from Santiago, and then they met in Miami, and I was born in Miami. And I have 2 sisters and a big Cuban family, and lots of cousins and that whole thing. So that's basically that.
Well, what got you into music then? When did you start performing?
I think my formal introduction was younger than I thought. I thought it was at 3. I took violin lessons with my sisters when I was 3. But it turns out my mom had gone to this Institute of Higher Learning or whatever to try and figure out the best way to raise kids. Or it was for human potential, I think it was. And she found that it was important to teach, kids an instrument or something like that. So she figured the violin was small enough to work with versus like a tuba or something like that. And she made a cardboard little violin out of like grocery bags and a piece of wood. And so when we were 1.5, she made this little violin so we could figure out how to hold it and how to stand. And it was really cool. Like, I don't know. And then when I was 3, I started taking lessons, and it was called the Suzuki method, which is for young kids to learn music. So we did that, and I played in a youth orchestra, and music was just a part of my life for a very long time. Well, it still is. So.
That's great. Did you play with your siblings too? Or were we just always sort of like indie solo sort of thing?
No, we all took lessons, and one of my sisters still plays, but the other one kind of dropped off. She kind of stopped doing music. But we all sang and played, and at one point we were taking a little guitar and piano, and just there was always music in the house, and we were always pretty active together. And we do concerts and matching outfits. So it was like that whole thing.
Well, when you were a kid, and someone would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" What did you have an answer that, or when did you know you had an answer?
Well, I've always had an answer. I wanted to do so many things, though. I wanted to be a figure skater, which is really hard because in Miami there was one ice rink and it was like an hour away. So it was like a really hard dream to accomplish. Although I tried my best on rollerblades, it just wasn't, the same. But I wanted to be a figure skater. I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to be president. And I wanted to be a singer and an actor. Like, I always loved doing that. What was the question? Like, when did I first know I wanted to do it?
Well, I said, when did you know you had an answer to the question, what do you want to be when you grew up? And sort of I was leading to, when did you know that you wanted to be a performer? But side note, rollerblades need to make a comeback. I love me some rollerblades. I'm
about to get some rollerblades. Like, are you kidding me?
I know. Here in New York, I think it's great. But being an animator, that's a new one for me. I love that. And I actually think, we were just talking about, the engineering side versus creativity for my fiber optic wall behind me here right before we started recording. And I was like, I think that so many artists, especially like successful on Broadway, their brains, like, we're kind of hardwired. You're driven, you keep going, and you want to have as much creativity as you can in terms of creating as well. And so being an animator totally falls in line with that, at least in my mind, because you're able to literally put pen to paper in some form or another, or, mouse click to screen, whatever it is now in today's technology, and create these new things with music and pictures and all of that.
That's so true. I mean, for me, animation actually, I think it came up because when I was in elementary school, I was 2 years younger than everybody. So I got bullied and I got really shy and I was kind of a loner. And so I found like when I wasn't doing music, because, you're in school, so maybe that's not really an option, I would just find myself drawing all the time. And then I just was like, oh, this is great. And I could do it. And then kids would see that I was drawing and I was like almost showing off. And then they'd come and gather around. So it was my way of kind of like still performing and still like expressing myself. And then I just really liked it. And I would draw comics. And I just feel like a lot of artists, we find ourselves expressing ourselves in so many different ways, whether it's tech, like you were saying, or just different mediums in art. And I think it's so beautiful. Like, we don't have to be just one thing. And the idea is to create whatever's in your heart to create at that moment,
Right. That's very true and very beautiful, actually. Very eloquent the way you said it, is that we don't have to be one thing. And especially right now in COVID times, in quarantine, we're all working mostly out of the same rooms, if we're working at all. Some of us are fortunate and some of us are less in that respect. And the work can come to you because of technology, right? Mm-hmm. So you can sit in your apartment wherever you are. Are you in the city now still, or
I'm actually I'm on the east side. I'm the East Coast still. I'm actually in New Jersey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I love it here. I moved at the beginning of the year, and there's trees everywhere, and it's you can see the city. It's so close to the city, but you're not in the city. So it's kind of a lovely balance.
Also, at least like you didn't move back to in with the parents or anything. There's
No.
like Tony nominees, Tony winners who are just, back with their parents now just because there's nothing to do, saving some money.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would have loved to actually just to see them, but I think they're very practical in that regard. They're like, no, Yvette, stay there, like, or maybe they're scared I have it and I'm going to get them sick. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's my parents.
Really?
I want to go see my parents. My mom's like, no, you're not coming.
Yeah, I mean, I actually booked the film and I'm going to be shooting it in October, and it shoots in Orlando. And so that's pretty close to Miami. So we wrapped the day before my birthday. So I'm going to try and be like, you have to see me. It's my birthday. And just like force a family hang.
Well, that's really interesting. I want to put a pin in that and come back to it. Book the film, but go back to the original part of our conversation where you're like, at what point in your age did you realize you wanted to perform?
I feel like I've always been performing. Like, I think because we were, taking violin and doing violin concerts and little recitals and things like that. And I was always writing plays for my sisters to be in and that kind of thing. And I don't know when I realized, I remember when I saw The Phantom of the Opera. That was my first experience seeing a musical live. And I was just like blown away by the costumes and the music and just the whole experience of it. And I remember like leaving the theater floating on air, like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. So it might have been then. It's very possible. But I don't know. I think every time I had the opportunity to perform in front of anybody, I just remember feeling like really happy and really like at home and just like confident, and maybe I wasn't confident in the rest of my life, but when I was performing, I was like, I got this, like I remember doing a little guitar recital with my older sister. And I don't know if she was nervous or not, but I remember thinking, don't worry, we're going to do a good job. Like I'll take care of it. Like I just felt really comfortable doing it. And it was always fun. I don't know, just like sharing music with people. So I'm going to give you a number. I'm going to say I was 7, but I don't know.
Wow. Well, no, you don't need to give me a number. I was thinking like, 16 when I was deciding between law school and performing arts, right? No.
Well, that's different though, because I feel like, as far as deciding what to do, I just was always doing it. And so even in high school, I was taking voice lessons at a community college and then gaining college credit at the same time. And it's called dual enrollment for any high school kids that are not aware. And then I think I just kept doing things in that world. And then people started paying me, I guess, at a certain point, and it just like didn't stop. I just found ways to perform, even if I had to make it up, So.
Well, that's fun. And it kind of leads me to my next question, I guess, is you mentioned being bullied when you were younger. So you were 2 years younger in school. Like, did you start school early? Was that part of it?
It was actually the last year they allowed people to do that. So I skipped first grade because I already knew how to read and write. And then I was 5 when everybody else was 7.
Wow. That's a big difference.
And it is. It is a big difference. And I don't think I would let my kid do that. If I ever had a kid, I would not let them do that. Just because I feel like socially, like it's something. It was hard, like kids can be really mean. And like it was like, oh my God, you're really little. And they just started that way. And it was just saying that, it was just, there's just a lot of bullying, and it was like a really lonely time, like in school. But I actually wrote a little children's book years ago called The Adventures of Little Eva, the talent show. And it was like basically about bullying and the importance of being and accepting who you are and all that kind of thing. But it was definitely inspired by that experience.
So the bullying, and where are you in line in the order of your siblings?
I'm the middle.
So you're right in the middle, right? Okay, so I'm just trying to get. I'm always curious as to what it is about performing and to what it is about being on stage that attracts people. And sometimes it's the validation. Sometimes it's the need to be seen. And you said something that kind of struck a chord with me. That you said being on stage is where you were most comfortable. Like you found a home there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think I understand your question. It's like, it's hard to pinpoint what it is that makes you love performing, because I'm sure part of it was the attention at one point, right? Like, I'm sure that's a part of it. But I think there's something to be said about the experience of losing yourself in a character, and then it's not about you at all. You're just like being free in somebody else's skin, and you're being freely them, or you're free in a song, and you're just like, how can I like lose myself in the song? How can I be free? And I think as humans, we're always searching for that feeling of freedom in some way. And so even though performing is like, look at me, it's also like not that at all. Sometimes it's like, how much can I lose myself in what I'm doing and experience freedom by losing the ego? So it's a weird, I mean, I've never tried explaining that, I guess. So sorry if it's not very articulate. But yeah, there's also, I just feel like whatever my worries are and whatever I'm stressed out about in life or just, thinking about or wanting, like I can't take that with me on stage. And if ever I do, I have to make it part of whatever I'm doing, So there's a sense of like, it's almost like meditation when you're not thinking, you're just in the moment, and you're so in the moment that I think that it's an addictive feeling in that way because of the liberation of just experiencing being present, I think.
Well, that's what athletes call being in the zone, right? Or,
yeah, sure, yeah.
You're in the zone. You found your flow. Flow is the new term that everyone's throwing around. Like,
flow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're on stage and you are this other person, and in addition, the singing and the performing, the energy, the vibrations, the physics of performing, the science behind performing. Like I just, anybody listening right now, I want someone to just start up this study about how people's brain chemistry, it's probably out there, how people's brain chemistry changes when they sing or when they're listening to certain types of music. And Tanya Pinkins told me once, she said that our brains cannot mimic, like I'm trying to phrase this a little bit more eloquently than I am. Our brains have to practice being empathetic by actually being in the moment. We can't imagine it.
Right.
So live theater allows us to experience ups and downs and be empathetic for characters without actually seeing people die or without actually seeing people get shot or hurt or whatnot. Like we're seeing a recreation of a story and our brains are reacting to that authentically, but it's not actually happening. Like people aren't dying and getting hurt, right?
Right.
So that's part of why chemically we are addicted to theater. And then you add on the vibrations of the singing on top of it. And it's just this big package that creates this perfect home for people.
I love that. Yeah, it's like a place to practice safe empathy.
Yes, exactly.
I love that.
And that I was reading on your website too, that your latest single, Quicksand, right? Let me read it from your website. Is a haunting ballad that showcases her talent as both a singer and songwriter. And then you're quoted as saying, I was inspired to write Quicksand because at the moment I felt stuck. I was frustrated that I seemed to be in a negative loop. So was that an in quarantine writing? Is that a recent thing? Or
I mean, I put out Quicksand last year.
Oh, really? And
then I actually was thinking of putting together a video in quarantine. So I might actually put that out. But no, that was it's interesting, that feeling of being stuck, of patterns, of repeating something and like finding yourself, like maybe the names changed or the details changed, but you're kind of in the same exact situation. And just like the frustration that came with that was how that song was born. Like, why is that? And like the more you try and get out of it, like the lyric I think is like quicksand, the more I fight, the deeper I fall in, or something like that. And that was just that, I guess. But it's funny, it could have been quarantine related. It just wasn't.
Well, it was, when reading that, I was like, oh, latest. Okay, like I don't know how recently the website was updated. So obviously it was last year. But it was actually, when you just said that, I was surprised to hear it was last year, because that's in the middle of Hadestown and the height of...
Well, I didn't actually write it last year. It was a song I had, because I was so busy with all things Hadestown related. I didn't get a chance to write as much as I normally do. And I was wanting to put out music and I wanted to do stuff. So I took a song I had written. I actually had written it for CeeLo.
Oh,
I was
really?
like, maybe he would. And then, and I just was like, I like that song a lot. Maybe I'll just put it out. So that was, I had written it probably a little bit before that.
So what were you feeling stuck about, though? I mean, what in your daily life, commuting between Jersey and Manhattan and all this stuff, you know, like I was reading your bio at the beginning, like you're successful, you're good, you're talented.
Thank you so much, Alan. I appreciate that.
And I mean, you are. It's like if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, and you're making it. You're doing a good job. And like I this is sort of a question I know the answer to, but I want you to talk about it because like a therapist told me once, wherever you go, there you are, right? This is internal, and it could be imposter syndrome. It could be ego. It could be so many things. It's different for everybody. Right. So like, talk about your side of this.
About feeling stuck and where?
Yeah.
Oh like my gosh, we're getting deep, Alan. Here we go. I don't mind.
Let's do it.
Well, I think definitely, I think it was in a lot of different ways. I can't remember what inspired that song. It might have been a relationship, right? It might have been dating the same kind of guy. I've been like, why am I dating the same kind of guy? Like, why is this happening again? So it could have been that, or that it starts off a certain way, but then it turns out to be something else. And I couldn't understand it. So I think there was some soul searching that had to be done there. But I think it also in different ways. For example, musically, I've always loved when I see like jazz musicians, for example, and they're just like improvising over all these chord changes and all these modes. And, you know, like it seems so effortless. And that theory side of it, like, I mean, I went to music school, like I learned a lot of that stuff, but I was never formally trained to improvise. So I can just make stuff up as I do. But even just like having that theory, or, you know, even on guitar too, like I knew like basic guitar. So then it is a little bit of that imposter syndrome where you're like, well, I can get by, but I want to be really good. And how do I get good? And so I realized that competence breeds confidence. So if you actually work on whatever it is that you want to do, or even in life, like if there's a quality that you like in somebody else, you could develop it in yourself so that you feel like the person that you want to be, you know? So during this quarantine, I ended up taking a guitar class at Berklee Music Online. And it was fantastic. It was like all the chords and all like the, you know, theory stuff, and just like, you know, and it was good to like learn all that on an instrument. And now I've been like kind of working with somebody and taking lessons and just really trying to like get deeper within music and be like, okay, let me get fancier with my, you know, with what I can do. And that makes me feel like I'm growing, you know. And I think that part of being stuck is like, you could be working, you could be successful, and that could be great. But I think you want to feel like you're making progress is my whole thing. And so, yeah, I guess you want to, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I guess feeling stuck was just from finding that I was still at the same level, and and in reality, when you look back, you're never at the same level. You're always a little further ahead. So it is definitely like a mental thing. Like I can recognize that. But yeah, and I think that now I don't see it so much as like feeling stuck anymore. I think I used to have that perception of it, like, oh my gosh, it's just like a revolving door, like it's a pattern, it's a cycle. But in reality, every time we do have patterns in our life, I feel like we're just trying to figure out how to break the pattern. So we're going to create a situation that will allow us the opportunity to figure it out. So if we treat everything that happens to us, every experience that we're like, this is happening, it's like, well, why is it happening? And if we could just change our outlook on life on those moments, and I guess like figuring out like actively internally, like, what's the lesson here? How can I like pass this test or whatever it is? Then I find that those things end up kind of falling to the wayside, and then you get the next challenge, and then so I think we might always feel like we're stuck, but we're not. We're just kind of growing. And
exactly. No, you cut from the same cloth, you and I. I get that. And that's like why I get bored in quarantine and build a wall with fiber optics in it. And you know, like I'm looking for home improvement projects. And you know, but when you look around, look at all the things you've got. And he's like, 5 minutes ago, you know, I didn't have all this stuff. I didn't have this knowledge. And and you're obviously growing. You've got the film that you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, right? So you've got the film, you've got the Broadway, you've got the art, the indie stuff, and you're always creating, and you're always thinking, and always having new experiences. So yes, I agree with you 100%. It's all about your mindset, because you get used to, 10 years ago, if you could talk to yourself, present self 10 years ago, would you think like, oh man, I'd be on Broadway and I'd be writing songs for CeeLo and I'd be going to Orlando to film movies? Like, this is insane. That won't happen to me. Blah, 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 blah. And then, so now you've got this. And just my advice, or I guess my ask of you is just to stop for a minute, maybe at the end of this interview or when you listen to it back again, and just be like, yeah, I got this.
I love that. I got this.
I got this.
Well, I love what you're saying too, because something I've been learning during this quarantine, and I know it's it's not a new idea by any means, but it's definitely something that made sense to me for some reason recently, which is the idea or the power really of positive thinking.
Yes.
As cheesy as it sounds, like there's this thing I've been doing where I've been noticing my own thoughts, and I've been noticing when I'm a bully to myself. And I've been noticing when I'm like encouraging and when I feel like optimistic and like anything's possible. And there's so much more, like, it's like such a higher frequency to be positive, and it's like, I don't know. So I've been doing this little exercise, like as of not that long ago, where I basically imagine what it feels like when I'm already where I want to be, whether that's in my personal life or in my professional life or whatever it is, or like my ability to give back to the world or whatever it is, like, what does that feel like? And then kind of live in that space for 5 minutes. And it's amazing because like when you do that, then like you probably can't do some of the things that actually do keep you in the same place, like procrastination, right? Because you're too busy like, feeling inspired to do the thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but
oh, completely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the emotional or the mental version of dress for the job you want, not the one you have.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so good.
So that's what somebody told me once. There was a friend of mine from college, my friend Byron. He listens to the podcast all the time too. So hey Byron, shout out to you. Love you. He would, like in college, right? All of us are walking around in like ratty hats and flip flops and shorts, and he always just had like a nice shirt and some well pressed pants or whatnot. And where I was like, that guy he just looks good. I want to work with him simply because he just presents himself as like this well put together guy. And I asked him once, I said, why if it's hot out, why are you wearing pants? He's like, dress for the job you want, not the one you got. And he was preparing himself now, and now he's successful and all this stuff. And I love that idea. And what you said is perfect mental version of that. It's just like, sit down. It's probably a form of meditation for you too, right? So you're focusing on it.
It's funny. My dad just told me that too, about dressing for the job you want. So when he came here from Cuba, like, he didn't have any money. He barely spoke English. It was like he had to start from scratch. And at one point, he had worked his way up to being like an insurance salesman, like a door-to-door insurance salesman. And I remember when we were going to school, he'd always, in fact, I have a picture of him, my dad and me. All right. Is that correct English? My dad and me? Like, he's wearing a suit and tie, and he had this like sky blue Cadillac. It was like the car when we were growing up. And I remember just thinking everything was always great. And I asked him about it one time, and he was like, basically telling me that he wasn't even doing very well at the time, but he would always wear a suit and tie and drive like a decent car so that potential clients would like think he had it going on. And I was like, man, that was so cool. And all this time I just assumed everything was fine, but we like didn't necessarily have a lot of money for a long time, and it was really inspiring to hear that.
I just had this epiphany. That's like at the time, that's like modern day social media, where all you're presenting is your positive experiences.
Wow, yeah, totally.
Oh man.
That's
like if
so true.
you have 100,000 followers and all you're doing is posting happy beach bikini pictures or whatnot, but you're going through a hardcore depression, people, if you don't want to post about it, then people think you're just wearing a suit and tie and driving a sky blue Cadillac.
Right. I mean, people still do that, I guess, like I was living in LA before I moved to New York, and you'll see people that are like not even employed and they're like in these really nice cars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about like giving people the perception that you're successful in this and that. And there must be something to that for sure. But it's interesting. I don't know.
I guess there's gotta be a balance though, because if you're putting yourself into more mental anguish, going into debt, driving a Ferrari.
Hello.
That's taking it too far.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, jeez, I wish I got a psychology minor at college, and
cool.
And so I always want to dig into this, and I feel like sometimes I would be a halfway decent shrink, but I don't know if I could listen to people's problems all day.
Then maybe not, Alan. Maybe not. That's so cool that you have that degree, though, because I think psychology is so fascinating. And you can tell that you did, actually, because you just jumped right into. So tell me about how you felt stuck. Like you just jumped right in.
Well, no,
which I love.
It's like I spent so much of my life pretending I didn't have problems because that's what I felt I was supposed to do, and feeling isolated in my problems, or because of it, because I didn't think nobody else talked about it either. And so like now, especially, I found my home on stage and singing, and I was one of the Broadway hopefuls for a while, and that was just where I sort of found my tribe of people, where like I was bullied too, and because I was the nerd, I was the computer geek, which wasn't cool at that time.
We would have been friends, Alan.
I could tell, yeah. But bullied and picked on and outcast. And it was weird because it was like in the sports crowd, it was cool. But then as soon as I left the soccer field, I was just like this dork that nobody wanted to hang out with again. And it was this weird dichotomy. And then I grew up in the South where religion came into a part of it. And because I didn't go to church, I was outcast, which to me was this whole hypocrisy of like, I thought you were supposed to be accepting of everybody, but yet I don't belong, So tons and tons of confusion. And I didn't talk about it. Didn't talk about any of it. And then it's like, finally, a couple of years ago, I just started seeing a therapist regularly. And it was just like, it wasn't, one of those moments like you see in the movies, because those aren't real. It was just like, oh, I'm cured. Like there's no cure. And that's what it was. It was find the way to express yourself, find the way to feel comfortable in your own skin, and don't try to fix things. There's no fixing. It's dealing with who you are. It's accepting who you are and using it to your advantage rather than letting it bring you down. Hence this podcast. This is a form of my therapy, because I love having these personal conversations. Like we've never met, we've never talked before this conversation, and we still haven't met in person. We're doing this virtually over the internet in quarantine. And I just crave human connection, especially now in quarantine. So that's why I want to be able to stare into your eyes here, and our brains are releasing serotonin, and because that's the bonding chemical that makes us love to hug. And when you're hugging, when you hold hands, like the best time when you're in bed with a partner and skin to skin contact, your whole body, like that's just massive serotonin releasing. And you also get small doses of that right now while you and I are looking, like I'm looking at your eyes on screen.
Me too. I'm covering my face so I don't see myself. I'm just looking at you.
Yeah, I have my notes over my side of the screen too, yeah. But yeah, like I'm looking at you as if we were face to face, and it makes us feel like we are bonding. Our brains, because we're herd animals. We've evolved from herd mentality, and we feel safer in groups and in numbers, and that's evolution for you.
Yeah.
And we find that on stage. I strongly feel that.
Totally.
Because you're going through rehearsal, sometimes can be a form of trauma, and you're going through all this high stakes emotional journey with people 8 times a week after the real life emotional journey of creating character and putting it on stage and going through tech and all of that goes into making a Broadway show, let alone anything else, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I love this stuff. Sorry, I get very excited about talking about the emotional and the chemical responses to to conversations and making new friends.
100%. And I love what you said about theater, though, because that is so true. You have so many hours that you're putting into creating something with these people that are like-minded individuals, right? And you're all creating something that you love. So everybody loves what they're doing there because who does theater unless you love it? It's not like you do it for the money,
Right.
So you do it. So you have all this love and like these people with hearts that are wanting to express themselves and to co-create something beautiful. And so there's already like intrinsically like a beautiful energy to start with. And it's just such a bonding experience. Like that's why when we were saying earlier, it feels like home and, that community. It's like, I don't think I've ever had stronger, outside of like family or friends or stuff like that. But like in a work environment, like theater is for sure the most bonding.
It's your chosen family.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a good chosen family too. Because these people, especially at this level, are committed to the craft. You have to be able to sustain this level again, eight times a week for all, with all the press tours and like Hadestown specifically won the Tony last year for Best Musical and got all these other Tony Awards and all these other nominations. And the press must have been insane, right? And you're doing that on top of your normal 8-show regime. And some people have kids and some people have kids with special needs and some people have relationships or parents that are going through trouble. And you don't see this. Like that's again, it's the suit and tie with the sky blue Cadillac, right? You're only seeing the positive stuff, but all of these people are going through so much other regular life issues all the time. And it's very, very impressive to me. And I take my hat off to you and everybody else at that level. It's so hard to maintain it, and you're crushing it. You're doing good.
Thanks, Alan. I feel so supported. I appreciate it.
So now with the Broadway Buskers, you've written your own music, right? You performed your own music. Actually, it just happened a couple days ago as we're recording this episode. So everyone go to timesquarenyc.org/Broadway Buskers or facebook.com/timesquarenyc or youtube.com/timesquareTSQ, and you can see all of Yvette's performances and whatnot. But what brought you to the Buskers? Why? Especially now in quarantine times, like, how is it? Expression, money, motivation? Like what?
I didn't even know I was going to get paid. I was like, "Ooh, that was a surprise." I was actually just doing it because I miss performing. And this whole quarantine, a lot of people have been, asking me to do videos for charities or to raise money for this or that. And so I've just been saying yes to like a lot of them, not all of them, because you have to say no to. But I've definitely been saying yes to a lot of them. And then I started wanting to just perform my original music again. And so I heard of them and I was like, oh, that might be cool. And then they reached out. So I was just excited. And now I'm actually looking for some other opportunities to perform because I miss it. And I actually like excited about trying out like some different songs and like crafting them a little bit, and I want to record some of them and maybe like very soon and like put them out in a couple months. Just like a little quarantine EP, nothing crazy. I think just because I like it. I enjoy it's fun to play music and it's fun to I was really happy I got to play with like a really talented guitar player, Seth Johnson. So we got to play music together and that was always fun because it's been isolating to not have that live music experience. So I think, I did it for so many reasons and I hope to do more. So that was just the first of many.
Hopefully very first of many. Are you isolated here in Jersey right now? Are you by yourself?
Well, I've been quarantining lately with a friend, and then I have been seeing some friends again. But we've been doing these like social distancing hangs with like the mask, and even it's outdoors and all that. But it's still so weird, And actually, where I live, it's really nice. There's all my neighbors know each other, so like they get together, and there's like a park area, and people like get together, but it's kind of strange, like. I don't know, like the isolation is still kind of a big challenge. You don't quite get used to it. What about you? Are you isolating? You have your family, right?
Yeah, I'm with my wife and my 2 little kids, and
Yeah,
I'm
so
like, I gotta get out. I gotta just get out of here.
Really? Oh, you're like, got it.
Man, I love them. I love them, obviously. But they're, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And the kids, you don't quite. I mean, they don't know kind of any difference. One just turned 4 and the other is 5.5. So the 5.5-year-old, remembers what it was like to not wear a mask outside. And the 4.5 or 4-year-old, he's just like, all right, cool. Whatever. He's fine. It's normal life. But like we just went to the Bronx Zoo for the first time.
How was it?
It was interesting. We can, like, all the inside stuff, the gorillas were closed because they didn't want people close together, and you actually had to get an appointment time to go in. You buy your ticket, and you're allowed to go in within a certain hour window, and that's when you have to go. So they don't want everybody showing up at once. And I like that things are starting to reopen, and in this area at least, everyone's wearing their mask, right? You've got other states that are just fucking stupid, but everyone, please wear masks.
I mean, seriously, guys, people.
Come on.
It's real. It's not going away yet.
But I want to hug people. I want to hug my friends. And again, the chemical release in your brain when you can hold hands with somebody or hug somebody, you get that tight hug of like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long, and it feels so good just to be in the same room with you again. And I cannot wait. I don't know how theater is going to reopen anytime soon. I cannot wait to sit in an audience and have a shared emotional experience with people again.
Yeah, that's going to be incredible when that happens again. I don't know when it's going to happen again, but it's going to. I mean, I heard actually, where was it? I think it was like somewhere overseas that they were doing some production of Phantom, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear about
South Korea.
South Korea. And that was interesting.
Now there's an outbreak in South Korea again.
Oh, now there's an outbreak. It was because of that show, because of Phantom. Honestly, guys.
Damn it, Phantom.
Yeah. I've been hearing lately, though, just as far as like the future of theater goes, that they're starting, I don't know if this is public knowledge, but I'll just not say the name, that they're filming another show, just like they did for Hamilton, but they're like doing a version of that and for like Netflix. And they're trying to like film shows now. And
yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
Well, it was announced that the Diana musical is doing that. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, there's the Diana one. And then there's another thing that's going on where they're doing like a green screen.
Interesting. It's
for another show. Oh, but yeah, the Diana one as well. I heard about that the other day and I was like, okay, because they were across the street from Hadestown. Mm-hmm. But I guess they're going to do like a green screen musical movie. So every actor will go in and do their part like in front of a green screen, and then they'll, I guess, add the environment and the backgrounds. I'm not sure. That sounds super expensive, and good luck to everybody. But evidently something like that is also in the works.
I mean, if you can put out a movie like Cats, I'm sure what you're describing is plenty doable. And
oh my
cheaper.
God, you just went there. I didn't see Cats.
Well, and were you high enough?
Well, we actually went, a group of us from Hadestown, we went and we all, it was an interesting moment. We were like, should we have a drinking game? Like, how should we get through this moment? It was interesting.
Well, it was unfinished. I saw the unfinished version.
Oh no, how did that happen?
Well, I don't know. Did you see it like a couple weeks after it was released or original, like around Christmas time?
Oh God, that's a good question. I don't remember when we saw it. It was in the theater, so I would assume.
Right. So Tom Hooper delivered the final cut to the screen for the press screening 3 hours before it was needed. So they were finishing it right up to the wire. And there were scenes where like Mistopheles is conjuring, doing his thing, and you can see
I know.
You could see unfinished computer generation.
Yeah.
And there were scenes like the dancing. They actually had shoes in real life when they were filming, but they replaced their shoes with feet. But when they lifted up their feet, you could see the soles of their shoes.
I think, did I see that? Because I remember being like, how come their paws look separate from their, like their hands were like separate? I don't know if that was on purpose or.
No, it was unfinished. It was an unfinished movie because they had to deliver it.
Isn't that crazy?
So then they finished it delivered a new version. So then, depending on when you saw it, you either saw the finished, I put in air quotes because it was still a steaming pile of cat poo, or...
I wonder then if I saw the unfinished version, because I definitely noticed things like that. And I was like, that's kind of strange. Because you think about the budget for the film, and I'm like, man, but hey, listen, I'm no one to judge. You make your art, and I'm...
Well, you know what my theory on this is, and this is way off the rails, but I don't care, is that it came out the same day as the Star Wars movie, which I also think was a bad choice. And I believe all of the great animators / animation houses were working on Star Wars. So they got probably like a second-rate animation studio or some not the best people to work on Cats, and you get what you get. Get what you pay for.
Oh, wow. That's a good theory.
My theory.
It would make sense. I mean, that's very possible. Who knows? But those are the kind of things I'm like, how did that happen? Like, how did a film get turned in unfinished of that level? And it's already a risky choice to make Cats the movie, the musical. Like that's a risky choice.
Yeah, I mean,
so you want to make sure all your ducks are in a row and everything is like perfect when you turn it in. I don't know. These things happen.
Very much so, and I don't know. Anyway, maybe we'll see Hadestown filmed for Netflix. Is that what you're?
Oh
is that what
God,
you're trying to announce?
No, trust me. I've pitched it several times to a couple producers. I'm like from Hadestown. I was like, guys, they should make a movie, and we should just quarantine everybody. Like the whole Tyler Perry and a few other people that are doing films and stuff. They just quarantine everybody for a couple weeks, and then everyone gets together. You don't leave the space, right? It's like maybe there's a hotel situation we could figure out, but like.
That's what the NBA is doing.
Exactly. And then you just shoot it like a movie and then go back and do it. I think, I'm not sure it would work because they have a tour for Hadestown. And so it might reduce ticket sales.
I don't know. I mean, look at Hamilton. Hamilton is on demand with like 3 or 4 tours ready to go back.
See?
Right? Like, if it's good, it's good. Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm not sure if that's going to happen. No, I don't think it is, unfortunately. But we'll see.
Being an indie artist and in the Broadway scene and in the voiceover scene and everything that you're doing, and you're doing obviously getting cast for TV and film, what's your theory on where you see things going when, I'll put in air quotes, life returns to normal? Because now, I'm helping produce some things that are written and going to be recorded entirely in quarantine. They're written for quarantine. So the even press tours now, publicists realize that it's just as effective to do a virtual call like this than it is to have you travel to a city and do a press junket and whatever the case is. So, like, where do you see this going?
I mean, I feel like what you just said is so true. Like a lot of situations that we used to do in person, and you travel 30 minutes, maybe an hour to get somewhere, and then you're like, I could have done this over the phone. Right? That didn't have to be an actual in-person meeting. But I feel like there's a lot of those things that might continue to stay virtual. But there's also obviously like the other things, like the live performances, and maybe select press moments or, whatever, that you really can't replace it with Zoom, Like I actually saw a concert the other day. It was a live streamed concert and it was great. I mean, she's such a talented artist, but it was just her and like in between songs, like where one might talk and you hear the audience talk back, or those moments didn't quite happen. So it was like awkward. And then there was just something about it that it didn't like quite move me as much. Right. And I just feel like there's certain things like live theater, for example, like live music in general, like you really can't replace, So I do think a lot of those things are going to come back, and then we're all going to be so grateful. And if people ever did a mosh pit, like they'll be like, yes, this is great. Like all the things that people might miss. But but I think a lot of things might stay virtual, a lot of these kind of things too. Like you don't have to go in person.
I think press engagements, I think, is going to be a lot more virtual. But I agree with you that, even what I was saying earlier about having shared emotional experiences with a crowd of strangers, Like, it kind of sounds creepy when you say it like that, but I think it's a necessary evil, right? Like, to sit in an audience and hear everyone around you crying with you, or laughing with you, or gasping with you, whatever that emotional response is. As an audience member too, for people who might not be comfortable with expression, that validates your own feelings
100%.
because it's like, oh, I'm feeling this way, and they are too. Okay, cool. I'll let myself feel more of this.
That's so true. Yeah. Wow, I didn't think about that because that's so true. I mean, I'm that person, like, I will ugly cry by myself in a theater. Like, I am just that person. But you're right. There's some people that don't feel comfortable showing their emotion and being upset or being sad. And then maybe the person next to them is totally cool, calm and everything. But maybe the person 2 people down or whatever is like a hot mess. So it's like, okay, I guess it's okay. Like, it would validate you. That's such a good point. Yeah.
Oh man, live theater, nothing beats it. Art heals. Art would heal. Art can heal. That's why I think so much. There's going to be some great stuff that's starting to come out. I mean, we've been in quarantine, 6 months now? Gosh.
Has it already been 6 months? Oh, wow.
It was March 11th, right? That Broadway shut down?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's month 3. We're in month 8. So 5.5 months or so. Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So it's kind of nuts. But God, I cannot wait for theater to come back and just to be able to really go out and connect with people, because when you collaborate and when you're in person, again, that energy, the excitement that builds together, and body language, and like both of us are leaning into this call here.
It's so true. We're just like trying to get a better view.
right. But there's all the unconscious body language. It's anyway, I'm going off the rails, but it's very important. And please just, everybody, wear your mask. Let's just make this better.
Wear your mask and everybody vote. Don't forget to vote this election. Just
right.
Throwing it in there.
well, that too, because on your Instagram too, you call yourself, you have activist like in your profile, right? So tell me about like what you're trying to do in that regard.
I'm like, wait, what's on my profile? Let me read my there's just a lot of causes that are important to me, and I try and get involved however I can. I started a nonprofit called Creative Minds Care, but that's actually to raise money for Alzheimer's research, which ironically enough, this year during the pandemic, we raised like a whole bunch of money. So now we're donating it to the Fisher Lab at Rockefeller University, because they're doing amazing research. But yeah, like whenever I can get involved with different things, whether it's education or, voting or just anything, LGBTQ, all the letters, like anything that I can get involved with, really. But yeah, I guess I should probably look at my bio. What did it say on there? I'm like, you can delete all of this, by the way. Yeah, just equal rights, really. I feel like it's so crazy that we have some of the issues that we still have, like it's shocking to me that we have to have Black Lives Matter, because and we do, we still don't have equality across the board. So it's such an important issue, but it's always, I think it's important to at least know what side of the fence you're on, and what side of the fight you're on, and to not be silent about things, because silence is you're still taking a side when you're silent. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, send me whatever you want to plug, and we'll put it in the episode notes. I'll wrap up this episode here with the 3 standard closing questions that I ask everybody on the podcast here. The first one, very simply, is what motivates you?
What motivates me? That's a good question. Progress. I think going deeper and being better, whether it's in my art or as a human, but the desire to experience my potential and my core and the truth is a big motivating factor for me. And love, obviously.
I love that. Next question is, what advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
I would always say keep working on your craft. That's always my go-to. Always keep learning. I had a teacher saying there's always a deeper deep. And I love that. So I always keep being better and be staying curious about what it is that you love. And also just to, like I said, just to keep growing as a person, I guess, because you can only be who you are. So you might as well be the best version of yourself. Like keep growing, keep growing.
I love that. I love that too. Great answers. Okay, final question, hardest one. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Hadestown. Duh. Although I'm in it, so that might be hard, but still.
I was going to say, with you in it, or like a recording, or live with the swinger and understudy?
Live, always.
Yeah.
Or I would see it from stage. I would. No, Hadestown's a good show, though. I love it.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
That was my shameless plug for our show.
Oh, God. Well, yeah, it's one of the best. Cool. So where can we find you on the social medias?
I am on the social medias. I am Yvette Nacer, YvetteNacer on pretty much everything. And it's my website. And I'm Yvette Nacer on Spotify. I have some songs out there. And that's it.
All right. You can get more of me at thetheaterpodcast.com. Show your support at thetheaterpodcast.com/Patreon. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at theater_podcast. On Facebook as well. Please leave a rating and send me a review wherever you're listening now. This has been edited by Matthew Hendershot. Thank you to our friends, Jukebox the Ghost, for the intro and outro music. And Yvette, thank you. This has been such a beautiful conversation.
I have loved talking to you, Alan. Thank you so much for having me and for sharing your heart. It's such a pleasure to talk to you.
You too. I think we are kindred spirits in some form.
Indeed.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.